Today, I'm going to give you what I think is the most important Sentinel tip for actually winning ranked games. And as far as I can tell, looking at other Sentinel guides, this tip is often not included in them. And so, what am I talking about? Well, the tip is to change your setups based on the type of team that you are playing. And so, let me explain. In ranked, I think you're likely to find different types of team that you come up against, and that they will play to that tendency quite a lot in terms of their attacking side, probably because their communication isn't very good and they don't have like an IGL who's actually pulling the strings for that team. The first type of these teams that you'll find a lot in the lower ranks and sometimes in the middle ranks and maybe even the high ranks as well is the paper wreck style team. This is the team that, you know, from the very start of the round just blitzes it in 5-man stacks, sending it down to the site. They're off the very rip and they're just trying to bombard the site, get the spike down, and then play a post plan. The second type of team is almost the exact opposite, the play for kills team, where they'll often just go off on their own, you know, probably walk around the map a lot, try and find timings, try and find 1v1 gunfights that they can then win and then convert into a successful round. And then we could even talk about individual players. You may have noticed that certain players in ranked games will only lurk. Right, they will literally just lurk every single round of a game and not do anything different and just lurk for pretty much 12 straight rounds in a row. And as a Sentinel player, we have to be mixing up what we're doing to give ourselves the best chance about what type of team we are facing. Now, of course, particularly as you get up the ranks as well, teams won't necessarily fit into this all of the time, but what will happen a lot of the time, even if they aren't that dumb to just do the same thing 12 rounds in a row, you will find that whatever they've been successful with, they then will start doing that more and more as the rounds go on. So let's now talk about how to play against these different styles of teams. This is mainly going to relate to Cypher and Killjoy, but it can also be expanded to some of the other Sentinels as well, and I will give an example for those. So first off, let's talk about how we'd play against a paper wreck style team, right? So the type of team that's just going to run it down on you a ton, right? They're going to start outside of the mains a lot, right? If they're just going to send it to site, this is probably where they're going to be starting a lot of their rounds. So what we want as a Sentinel player is to get that information as early as we can. So for instance, for Cypher, it might be putting up a camera like this one, right? Where we can see into a main directly straight away where those attackers are going to be, right? And this kind of camera, if you are playing that kind of team, likely will have like maybe 4 or 5 people on it, right? And you'll know straight away, yep, they're coming to my site. It also, conversely, might be 0 people. It might look like this right now, right? In which case, you might want to take an educated guess that, hey, they're probably going to be, right? And your players might even start drifting towards that B site instead. And, you know, if they aren't defaulting, right? If you are playing a heavy default team, you know, you probably have one person here who's just going to shoot that all the time, right? And this camera would find almost no value, right? But if you're playing against a team that's rushing a lot, this camera will find a ton of value because either you'll probably see a lot of people or no one. And if they are just fully sending it every round, then you want to put obviously utility that can help stop it, right? You might put trips on the site to catch them out, little kill trips like this. This obviously could be similar for a Killjoy, alarm bot and nanoswarm setup, right? You might put yourself in a bit of a safe position if you're playing Cypher. Put down a cage like that, wait for those trips to go off, put your cage up and find a free kill. And the same can be said for Sage as well, right? That again, I'm sure a lot of you end up doing this wall in mid quite a lot in these games. But again, if you're playing against that kind of fast rusher team and your teammates are struggling on the sites, Sage is one of the best agents for stopping a rush. And so you probably should be going to the sites, particularly if you're struggling with one of them, you know, where you can put a Sage wall up here instead. And, you know, then throw down some slows once they start destroying the wall. And that's going to give your teammates enough time to actually rotate here, making this, you know, site exec for them a lot harder. But if that still isn't working for you and those rotates maybe still aren't getting there in time or whatnot, what you can then do as a secondary option against this kind of team as well is go for the exact opposite, where you put all of your Sentinel utility in the parts of the map where they aren't ever touching, right? Where you end up with something maybe that looks like this, right? Where you put trips. If they are just fully rushing the site, you put trips here on both sides of kind of, you know, up towards ramps and up towards B heaven there. And you might put your camera out here in mid as well, right? And then between all of this is covering everything else. And then you can commit the rest of your team, 2 players on B, 2 players on A. And then maybe you as the Cypher just wait for, you know, your teammates to say which side they're coming on. And you just have a bit of a better sight overall. And here's a Killjoy example, for instance, on Haven, where this is the kind of turret that you want to be placing up on this box, right? That sees all the way down C long, that will give you time to react, right? And against this kind of fast rush team, you can put down this turret and you could probably leave and just watch Garage, right? Because this turret is going to give you enough time for when it sees someone to you to then react and, you know, come and get into position by the time that they actually come down and are ready to exec on the site, right? It will also give your teammates more time to react to this kind of turret as well. And you can even, depending on how extreme they really are with rushing it, you can get extreme yourself if you really want to, right? Like, you might be able to even get away with turrets like this, that you come down on A and you actually just put a turret out like this, right? That just sees into A main all the way here, right? This turret against any team that defaults is useless. They will just destroy it straight away and then, you know, do something else. But against a full 5-stack rush team, if they are that extreme, this is an insanely good turret because, again, if this turret doesn't go off, I mean, you can go to B, right? If it doesn't go off, and this turret will see them all the way here. So if they've started towards C and maybe it got rejected or whatever and, you know, don't know whether to go back or not, you could be all the way over here still in range of this turret, and it will give you a ton of early information, you know, that hey, it's going to spot them by the time in lobby. I can actually get back to the A site, no problem, right? And so again, turrets like this, if you are playing a very extreme team, are going to be pretty good. But now let's talk about the opposite kind of team. The team that, you know, goes across the map on their own, and, you know, and is playing spread out and is just looking for kills on their own, right? And not really doing too much else. Well, if we did the camera that, you know, we were doing before against them up here, you know, this camera would be awful against that kind of team because the one person who's just sitting out here just destroys it. And then, you know, you've lost your camera for, you know, for not much gain there. So what's the kind of setup that we want to do for them? Well, you have a couple options. One is you want to really test maybe how far they're actually willing to go, right? So for instance, this kind of trip down here in vents, the attackers have to go, you know, quite far and quite deep into vents. You know, they're quite committed to get to this point, right? To actually break that trip. So you want to be doing stuff like that where you are kind of testing, you know, how far are they actually willing to go. You might do a camera that looks something like this, right? That again, if you do see someone, you know, down here, right? Again, this means that they are very committed. They're out, you know, they're really out on the site if they've come this far and can see this camera, if you can see them. And so, you know, they might be in some trouble if this camera can see them. The same might be true up for here on ramps, right? Where again, if you can see them up here, right? And you can see their toes and you can see, hey, they're coming up here, or if they come this way as well, right? They are pretty committed, and you might be able, if they are completely on their own, to isolate them, right? That if someone is up here kind of, you know, on their own, you might be able to isolate them. You know, they might not be able to cross back across, right? You might pinch on them, you know, through this way, and you know, just find a free kill on a player who's kind of stuck and has found themselves in a really bad position. And moving on from that, what you can consistently probably do against these players, particularly if you're in a duo queue, is trap them, right? Let's say again that one of our attackers is just obsessed with walking up here on ramp, right? I know I've played against players like this. A lot of the rounds, they will end up in this kind of situation here and will just, you know, walk themselves up in towards ramp, right? And will walk towards this area. You can trap people, you know, doing this kind of stuff in a couple different ways, right? You might put a camera here, right? And just wait for the contact here, get you and like a Phoenix or something, right? If you're playing in a duo, anyone with a flash or any kind of stun or anything like that, right? You just wait for the camera contact, wait for them to walk up here, and then it's flash around the corner, swing, easy kill, right? Or you might even let them get deeper than that, right? You might even do a camera like this behind this box and hide behind this wall, right? And same thing, you just wait for, you know, this camera to see them. As soon as it does, okay, off we go, and then we get a free kill. Now, if you are doing that kind of trap play, what you might want to do, just to make sure you have the information, is you might want to put your trips, you know, on, like for instance, if you're not playing on the A site, you might want to come and put trips on this A site, right? Just to make sure, you know, that this is covered. You have your bases covered in case they do go there. But this kind of trap play, again, is the kind of thing that you can do. And you could, if you're playing Cypher, you can do it with a camera or a trip. And with Killjoy, same thing. You can do it with the alarm bot or the turret. And this kind of thing is true for any lurkers you come against as well, right? You might have played in these type of games where, you know, anytime the attackers go B, they've got one guy who just waits here and is just waiting to lurk up mid and come and be the backstab at the end, right? Well, what you might say to that is, okay, we're going to play retake B this round, right? Or maybe even not, right? Maybe you as the Killjoy come and anchor B, but you just put an alarm bot down here for your teammates that anytime that goes off, again, let's say you've got like a Phoenix or anyone with a flash here, right? They're just waiting for that alarm bot and then they're going to flash off it and swing. Or you can join in as well where, you know, maybe you have a teammate here for you. And again, as soon as that alarm bot goes off, you just kill the lurker for free, right? And you play a 5v4 retake or whatever it is. those kind of things, again, those little traps that you can set up, you can easily punish people if they are doing the same thing over and over again. And so I think that this is one of the most important things you can do as a Sentinel main, a Sentinel player, mixing up your setups based on what the opponent is doing. Now, of course, at the very start of the game, you're not going to know what your opponents are doing. So the first like 3-4 rounds or whatever, you should just be solely thinking about what is the opponent doing, right? Like, are they rushing down the sites a lot? Are they playing very slow? Try and gather that initial information and then adjust your setups for the rest of the rounds accordingly. Again, at the highest ranks and the higher ranks in general, it's probably going to be more varied. But again, keep in your mind, people will generally go back to what has been successful later on in the game. So keep in your mind, like, what rounds have we lost? Was it when they were rushing the site? Was it when they, did that heavy mid play? Whatever it is, right? Keep that in your mind because people are likely to go back to what has worked for them in the past. And then based off of those things, you can then adjust your setups accordingly to then be able to punish whatever they are doing. And hopefully that will give you a lot of free kills and a lot of free wins.